Umehara studied Western philosophy at Kyoto University after World War II. However, he came to think that Western philosophy was unable to respond to the environmental issues and many other problems faced by modern civilization. When he was about 40 years old, Umehara gave up on Western philosophy and immersed himself in the study of Japanese culture. He investigated Japan's archaic culture, ancient history, mythology, Buddhism. He wanted to explore the beliefs held by the Japanese people from ancient times in search of answers to the conflicts in modern civilization. This long-term project is sometimes called Umehara Japanology. Soon after the earthquake in April 2011, Umehara participated in the government's Reconstruction Design Council as its only philosopher. His statements propelled the discussion about abandoning nuclear power.
The way I see it, this disaster is a natural disaster, and in some respects a man-made disaster. But actually, I'd call it a civilization disaster. Our civilization is met with disaster. What is this civilization? It uses nuclear power to enrich human life and make it convenient. That's the civilization that's met with such disaster. I consider this a judgment on our whole present civilization. How shall we respond to this judgment against our civilization? It means it's not only an energy issue. In other words, not only do we have to develop energy resources such as solar power and wind power, we must transform human civilization itself.
Classifying the nuclear power plant accident as a civilization disaster, Umehara started to review the foundations of modern civilization, Western philosophy, from the ground up. And he is convinced that one fundamental idea introduced about 400 years ago is seriously flawed. In the 17th century, the French philosopher René Descartes posited, "I think, therefore I am." Descartes subscribed to the view that the thinking self was the only real concrete thing in the world. He further held that the nature that existed in front of his eyes could be translated into mathematical formulas and easily dominated. That Cartesian philosophy, which holds that man stands above nature, allowed science to flourish and led to the Industrial Revolution. At the same time, however, it has led to environmental destruction and caused other major problems.
It's anthropocentrism. Descartes' "I think, therefore I am" leads to I. The I is at the center of the world. And then outside of that, you have nature, the world of objects that can be understood by laws of natural science and laws of mathematics. Therefore, using mathematical laws to explain the laws of nature, humans can dominate nature. I think it's an ethics for dominating nature. So with this, we built a civilization of science and technology which literally dominates both nature and humanity, a civilization of will. With such a willful civilization, humanity is destined to destroy nature or destroy its own humanity. And such a civilization of will is, in my opinion, embodied by nuclear power. I wondered if, hidden inside Japanese ways of thought, there isn't a principle for a new civilization that surpasses the principles of Western philosophy and modern civilization.
Humanity cannot survive with Western philosophy, says Umehara, who proposes instead a founding principle for a new civilization, a belief existing in Japan since ancient times, which calls for coexistence with nature. He says it is epitomized by the Buddhist concept, Somoku Kokudo Shikkai Jobutsu. That formula means essentially, all nature has the Buddha nature. In other words, everything has a soul, just as humans do. Human beings are not special. Every being is nothing more than a part of planet Earth. Umehara considers this belief to embody Japanese concepts inherited from ancient times.
I wonder if the basic principle of Japanese philosophy can't be expressed in the form of the statement Somoku Kokudo Shikkai Jobutsu, which can be summed up as all nature has the Buddha nature. More literally, the grass, the trees, the homeland, meaning the very earth. So even rocks and the land are living beings with earthly desires and have the Buddha nature and thus can attain nirvana. I wonder if it isn't a plant-centric worldview. The way this thinking goes, even ecologically speaking, the animals were born parasitic to the plants. I've elaborated on this principle myself, by the way. We have to go back to the civilization of coexistence. Put the plants in the center and look at the world, and you'll find that plants have diversity. Therefore, plants coexist, and that's how it should be. Plants may have will, but their will is a lot different from animals. After all, their will is for coexistence, and that is the plant-centric worldview. Thus, even though it is said that modern ideas went from geocentrism to heliocentrism, I wonder if philosophy hasn't really stayed geocentric. The humans are at the center and things rotate around them. Such a human-centric philosophy must be abandoned. We must return to the idea of coexisting with every living being, as expressed in the principle, all nature has the Buddha nature. That's point one. Another thing I want to stress very much today is eternal recurrence.
Modern civilization has been caring only about the present. Umehara says the opposite, that we must think in terms of a longer time frame. The theory of eternal recurrence states that one's life was inherited from the past, and that that life will continue far beyond the self. Feeling that life on Earth has continuity will lead to reverence toward nature. That's Umehara's belief.
Our lives, after all, started with primitive life forms, and that essence has been passed along non-stop, continuously. And our lives will continue on into eternity forever. Our lives, as such, must be in the lead and put in the center. And then a deep sense of reverence toward nature, the nature that gave us such a wonderful life. This sense of reverence has to be at the center of civilization, doesn't it? I feel that way very strongly these days. and from that, certain human values grow. That's how I see it. I sowed a kernel of wheat. I hope it will be accepted by the younger generation, and they will make it their own and even change its shape. But I sincerely wish it will grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
A conversation that bridged the generations and lasted over 3 hours is now over.
This land we stand on now, and this Japanese language that we speak now, this language has a long history coming from 1,000, maybe 1,500 years ago, and it's an asset that future generations will inherit. I became very aware we are living inside this culture of ours. Listening to everything Mr. Umehara had to say today, his words inspired me, and I deeply felt that it is up to me to inherit that kernel of wheat sown by Mr. Umehara and nurture it. And by doing so, we ourselves, we, the next generation, must think about the future of Japanese society. This was inspiring.
A new philosophy with which to transform civilization. Takeshi Umehara spoke today about his life of 86 years. About a kernel of wheat which will be inherited by the young generation living in a post-March 11th world.